really realizing that we are lacking a simple competence which enables us to spot fake news. So I am really happy that Svetlana joined us today. I will now give her space to shortly introduce herself and to share with us, let's say, some brief insight into the topic. And after we will continue with some questions. So Svetlana, welcome. Thank you for joining, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Ilona. So, hello to everybody. My name is Svetlana Siljanoska. I'm a strategic communications consultant. For over more than a decade, working on crafting communication strategies and spotting and mapping and countering disinformation on national and regional level. I would firstly like to thank Ilona and her organization for arranging this interview as well, because I do consider that disinformation and information manipulation are one of the biggest threats that we are facing in our everyday life, but due to the fast and rapid development of technology, it's becoming very more difficult day by day to spot it and to be able to recognize it and work with it. Before I dive into the specifics of this information, first I would like to begin with introducing a little bit about why disinformation is very important, and recognizing and countering disinformation is very important in our everyday life. It is basically because we do need very well sourced information in order to make everyday decision for ourselves. And this can be sometimes very harmful. For instance, we need to check the weather outside so we know how we can get dressed to go to work today, or we do check what is the road when we try to make a trip. And these are very logistical information, but sometimes this information can affect very seriously our life. So, for instance, during the pandemic, when we had information about how should we move, how should we protect ourselves, how we should vaccinate ourselves, etc., where it literally is affecting our life. And even in today, when we are not in the pandemic, we still do have the need to get this proper, verified, true information so we can make informed decisions about ourselves and our future. And this, in the past, has been very much developed through sets and of barriers or sets of people whose job was basically to verify this information before they were allowed to be transmitted somehow. Back in the days when only TV was possible, it was very much strict and edited who and how could have access to that particular time slot that we were seeing on the news, or we were seeing in the TV shows, or sometimes in the radio. However, with the internet and the fast development of the technologies, where information become very much available, which is positive progress on one hand, but also it brings the danger of flood of information which is not verified by anybody. It comes the danger of not being able to recognize who is placing what information and on what behalf. Also, with the development of the AI tools, this has become much more rapid. So it means that vast mass information are being produced without the filters in the background of understanding who is creating them and why are they there. And that is leading us to a situation where, as a citizen, as a person who is working or studying, it has become increasingly difficult to recognize the information and understand whether it's disinformation or not. And it's very much more difficult to make informed decisions on it. So I would like to remind ourselves on the pandemic as well, because it was a very, very clear and much more intense way of understanding how disinformation can affect our everyday lives. And through those examples, I would like to share how can we recognize them. So sometimes disinformation doesn't necessarily have to be directly connected to something really bad. Sometimes they are this feel good disinformation, sometimes they are fun, sometimes they're about I don't know, drunk animals making jokes, etc. However, the ability of the disinformation to gain our attention and our emotion is what is the basic driver. We need to be able also to understand what is the difference between disinformation and misinformation. So disinformation is happening when somebody is deliberately creating information which is not true or is manipulative, and it's placing that information for people to see it. So misinformation is when we hear something which we haven't really checked, but we still say it. There's no intention of deliberately lying to people or deliberately making people believe in something else. It's just us being not being able to fact check everything that we talk and see and then share it. So the idea and the intent in the background, it's what's making the difference between the disinformation and every other information which might not be true, but it's out there. And as I said before, sometimes this information can be feel good information. Like I said, maybe some funny videos about animals. Sometimes they are mostly designed to test our visual abilities. So sometimes they are AI created videos and pictures of people who we're not able to recognize that they have been AI. They have been created by AI. Sometimes they are designed to challenge authorities. So sometimes they're designed to challenge institutions and to make us distrust the information that's coming from the institutions. And sometimes they are just designed to make us distrust or take a step into a certain direction. It is very important to understand that the disinformation that's being created has a background. So when a person or when a structure is deliberately creating this information, there is a background and the reason why is this happening. And sometimes this can be monetization. It means that the person who is creating the disinformation, who is very viler, who is making us click and share it, has found a way to monetize it. And this is, for instance, how influencers make living with a very large virality of their content. Um, Sometimes it is designed to be audience farming. And this has happened to be the case where people are creating groups and pages which are farming a lot of people tracking them with one type of content, and then can switch and can be sold to companies. Sometimes it's data collection. So what we think it's sometimes free, we are just paying it through our data. And this sometimes can be in form of viral quizzes or checking how would we look when we're old, and this type of fun content which we don't know that we have been paying with our data, but then that data can be used later on for marketing purposes or for companies that need specific type of information so they can sell their products. And sometimes there is a political agenda, so it means that people can be persuaded into voting or not voting. Maybe sometimes, I don't know, vaccinate or don't vaccinate, or basically any political stand on the aisle. What's important for us to always understand is that this information is always created to extract some emotion from us. Whether it's positive or a negative, that emotion can drive us to do something. So it's sometimes maybe just sharing the information, and sometimes maybe doing an actual step, which is maybe not being vaccinated or being vaccinated, etc. But it's coming from a place of fear. So without a question, disinformation is creating any type of emotional reaction to us, and then we take a step based on that emotion, which is very unlike when we do take step which is based on just information which is factual. So for instance, if I want to go out and I go out on the balcony and I check the weather, I have a factual information about how should I dress myself today. But if I open the internet and I see on any social media that there's a giant gorilla chasing the town, I will be feared and I might not get out. Now, the plausibility of that happening is where digital and media literacy lies, and whether our critical thinking is happening or not. But sometimes this information is created so it's believable and it's actually causing us to do something out of an emotional point. Um, how can we recognize it in our everyday life, which I think is also very important self-check mechanism? Because if we already know that it's coming from a place of emotion, then we have to ask ourselves whether this information is making us feel somehow or not. So whenever we're opening our social media or we are opening our media channels where we get informed, and when we read an information, we should pause and in that particular moment ask ourselves whether this information is making us angry or happy or afraid, or basically any emotion that can drive us to go somewhere from that particular information. And that's the first self-regulation that we can do when we are doing the self-checking, when we're getting ourselves informed. And then after that, then we can ask a series of questions, and that is, who is creating this information, how this information got to me, did I reach it out, or was it somehow sponsored and it has reached my space, do I believe this message or not? And then who else is seeing it? Is this very viral, or is this bot driven content that has somehow reached me as well? Like, are any of my friends sharing it? And if they are sharing it, then why are they believing it? And these are the first few steps that we can do so we can recognize whether we're dealing with a disinformation or not. But also, there's several other things that if we're very interested in the information we can do so we can make sure that we are reaching a very factual and checked information. And besides the stopping, we can do some investigation of the source. So we can open and see whether this information has been shared by a verified source, whether this is a person or a media channel, or maybe a person who is from expert point of view, which we can trust or not. Then we can also try to find the same information, but just with better sources. So if this is coming from a sketchy website, maybe we can try and find it on a more recognized one. See if somebody else is also claiming this, or maybe somebody else is opposing to this information. Do some lateral reading. Lateral reading means that when we are reading about something, we stop and pause and we open few other channels to try and seek and find that particular information so we can compare what we are reading about it. And also do a digital well-being and sanitizing of our feed. When we do spend a lot of time online, we do tend to take a lot of the information in without having the time to critically assess it. But when we do calculate the digital well-being, and when we do awarely try to decrease the time that we spend online, that is for sure a period when we are very much more careful about what we are consuming. So if we do the digital well-being counting, for instance, and see that we have spent 6 hours online today, and we want to cut that on 2, then we can also calculate the amount of time in these two on what we are going to spend it. Whether we're going to read something that is very interesting to us, whether we will be informed with the news, or whether we will spend in chatting with our friends. And it is very important also like a note for everyone to not dumb shame friends and family who have been trusting this information. It is very easy to be tricked with this information, and it is very easy to be deceived by AI content. This is very in 2026. It is very difficult to spot and recognize this information on the first attempt. But it's also very humane and normal to make mistakes. It is very important what we do afterwards, whether we are correcting our behavior, whether we are learning a lesson from that. And to be able to do that, we need to be able to understand that sometimes people do not recognize that they have fallen for disinformation out of the shame. So it's very important not to shame people when they do fall on disinformation, but to be able to have a very informed discussion about it, and then provide that space so people can correct their behavior.
Thank you very much, Svetlana, for such a detailed introduction. I really resonate with the last one, like don't shame people, but like talk to them. Because I see that, especially, for example, my grandmother is now really falling into this like spiral of AI videos with the cats. And it may sound funny until the AI videos will not be, let's say, yeah, tackling other topics. But I don't think that it's just a grandparents. We were both involved in these international trainings when we had a group from 7 different countries. And it was, let's say, younger generation, but also there were like more experienced youth workers and teachers. And I'm not really sure that we all knew how to direct fake news. Yes, when you ask them, everybody say yes. But I think when after going through the practical activities, I definitely think that even if we know, we need to practice. That was at least my conclusion. Could you maybe now share how, when you were delivering these activities, how did you feel about it? How the group reacted? And what was your conclusion, like an expert, how we should approach this topic, for example, during trainings? What did you find out?
Well, the practical exercise was educational for me, I guess, as much as it was educational for the group. Although the group was learning about tools and about possibilities so they can check and verify information, for me it was very educational to understand how younger people are perceiving information and how are they checking information, or what is their necessity to actually check the information. So in that sense, I was glad that I was able to present tools, digital tools, which are helping us navigate if you want to check the background of the information, or the source, or the story behind it. And it was easy to see that the older generation is somehow still used on reading articles, but the younger generation was not really used on reading the whole articles, because their generation is being informed. And when I say there, I mean Gen Z generation is being informed mostly audio visually, with very short and brief materials. Whether articles are kind of long, they take time, and in the end you reach to your own conclusion. So I think that in this context, introducing media and digital literacy is one thing that can be helpful for everybody, because I think that with the development of the technology, digital literacy is something that needs to be constantly advanced for everybody, not just young or old people, but also for like everybody who is active and present in the digital sphere. And that is one thing, but also another thing is I think that we need to start finding a way to talk to each other generationally, so we can be able to understand each other. If that means that we can share the knowledge in a way which is acceptable to the younger generation, we should do it. We should do it because it will be more effective, and it will have some effects for them. uh, I find it very interesting that Gen Z participants were were must fetch faster with the digital solutions, but were also very prone to using AI for delivering the tasks, which I think is also um, good in this sense, because AI tools can be used for verifying of information. Um, so these are few of the takeaways that I took with me. I have to say honestly that I have been very much thinking about my adjustment of the communication when it comes to communicating with the younger generation, and also it has inspired me to do a lot of work in this direction.
Thank you very much for your input. I also noticed how they were using these AI tools, but honestly, in one moment for me it was a bit, I don't want to use the word, but okay, let's use it, ridiculous. Because when they were having this group work, I just want to draw the picture. There were four people from four different countries, and all were all the time asking ChatGPT what the ChatGPT think. And I really like that they use different tools, but also they could also talk to each other. And I was encouraging them that the main aim also of this international training is to talk to each other and kind of see the differences and approaches. And I know that they asked ChatGPT so many times that the final text didn't have really much sense. And when they were reading it, they were like, what is this? So yeah, for me, so now I'm a bit like, I think that especially me, like a youth worker, I still don't know how to really use all these tools. I think in the most, I would say, like a way which is really good, like is efficient, and to don't get into this spiral, because I a little bit noticed that they go to this spiral of using it so much that we kind of lost our thinking about it. But yeah, definitely, like it was kind of interesting to see how they navigated through the task.
For me particularly, there was one interesting moment where the exercise was us discussing context. So basically, the groups had all the same image, but the instructions were leading them to create different contexts from the same image. And the idea of this exercise is to understand that even if an information can be factually true, it really much depends on the context whether the whole picture is positive or negative. Um, but what was interesting in that exercise was that the task, which was basically to develop three different sentences, was given to AI instead of to themselves. I think that we could have seen the gap, because for us it was very much easier to develop three sentences, but just by thinking about them and then discussing them as a group, whether the Gen Z participants were more prone to give that task to AI, so they could, so I think it was ChatGPT, so the ChatGPT can develop the story for them. And it's very important for me from that moment on to be able to catch that moment and get them thinking and lead them through the thinking, because I think that's the part which is missing, like a link between us.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that this comment like about making people think is very important when we speak about critical thinking and media literacy. So thank you very much for all your input and your observation when delivering this international training. I would have a last, let's say, question for you. If you now imagine like very young person, because we work with them, and this person say that he or she doesn't really care, because who should care about like all this information and this topic? What you would be your argument that this person should start to care about it? You mentioned it at the beginning, like lot of reason, but what do you think like would be, let's say, the best answer for this young person, why they should care and why they should be aware about this topic?
I mentioned at the beginning that it's making us, that information is helping us do decisions, but also information or disinformation is affecting how are some of the things that we want to achieve being also affected. So the things that happen to us as well, not just how are we navigating through our everyday life. So my basic direction is always to see what is important to the person, what is the most important thing to the person, and then tie that information to a situation in everyday life where this information can affect it. So for instance, if a young person is really careful about their online presence and appearance, then maybe explain to them how this information can affect that. When somebody is making I don't know, fake AI from their online presence and say something that they would never say or they would never do, which is either embarrassing or maybe degrading for them, then that is the fastest way. I have been discussing this information with young people so far, uh, because unlike us, the younger generation is developing their social life through social media. So social media presence is very important for them. This is the fastest way to somehow explain why is this very important. If somebody can fake your whole online presence, then you should be very careful about how are you recognizing, approaching, and then dealing with this information.
Thank you very much for this tip. And to kind of close this sharing, I would have also one tip for all of you. What also worked for us recently is that we try to, and Svetlana also mentioned, to kind of connect different generations. And very recently, I really like activity when we connect young and adults, and we, of course, if they feel comfortable, we ask them to exchange their phones or really show them what kind of feed they have on Facebooks, Instagrams. Very often it's really even the realization what others follow or what others, how their social like world mean around them. I think even that's a big realization. And I don't just speak about this information that some young people are really sure that still someone is on Facebook and where is this TikTok account, but even the fact what you really have, the world which you build. And I think that's always very kind of nice opening to, for example, discussion about algorithms, who we are following and who is kind of building this world around us. And it leads really to interesting questions. So that would be also one tip from my side. So thank you very much, Svetlana. If you have now anything to add, please do so.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to share one more example, which was really interesting to me. I have a cousin who is very much more younger than me. So I was seeing her and her friends being on this joint video call when they were all applying makeup so they can go out in the evening, which is very, very different of how we were getting ourselves prepared to go out in the evening when I was her age. But besides discussing where are they going in sense of how should they get dressed and what makeup should they put on, also they were discussing the interior of the place where they are going in and whether that place has a lot of check-ins and whether that place is popular on TikTok and Instagram, which is also very different decision making from when we were going out, where we knew where our friends are hanging out and where we have most fun. But they were instantly thinking of what is going to be the picture that they're going to post or the video that they're going to post on social media from that going out. So explain to her that check-ins can be faked and can be bought, and that basically the disinformation is that that place is very popular when it's really not. And she was shocked from the idea that somebody would actually pay a lot of people to check in and actually post a picture from there. And then I also explained how this works with influencers, that sometimes influencers are being paid so they can check in from a place and then they can drive the audience there. And this was the fastest way to explain this information through their decision making in their everyday life.
Yeah, thank you very much for this example. I think these examples are the ones which can catch the attention because it's really something what if you do it every day, it's good to know. And it really have to make us realize that if somebody can pay someone, why we, how it really works, and to question after like how it's happened. Also, that's one of my other favorite questions, how it happens that we can use all these social networks, let's say, for free if we don't pay, and what is after the product, and what is the information. Nevertheless, that would be for other talk, maybe some other time. So thank you once more for spending some time with us, and I wish you other opportunities to share your knowledge with other target groups. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It has been